It all started with the bathroom mirror. I had just moved into a charming little house on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and I loved it. The first few days were spent unpacking boxes, rearranging furniture, and settling into the new place. Nothing felt off, at least not at first. The first time I noticed something strange was during my nightly routine. I was brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection absent-mindedly. My reflection stared back, of course. Same tired eyes, messy ponytail, toothpaste smudge at the corner of my mouth. But then as I spat into the sink and reached for my towel, I saw something. My reflection didn't move. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. I looked back at the mirror. The reflection was fine now, moving when I moved, perfectly in sync. I told myself I was just tired. Moving is stressful, right? I laughed it off and went to bed. Over the next few days, I started noticing other little things. My reflection would linger for a split second longer after I stopped moving, like it was lagging behind. Sometimes I caught it staring at me with this intensity, like it was studying me. It wasn't just my imagination. I swear its expression would shift ever so slightly, just enough to make my skin crawl. I started avoiding mirrors as much as possible, but in a house with a mirrored bathroom and a hallway, it wasn't easy. One night, I was washing dishes in the kitchen when I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the darkened window. My hands were submerged in soapy water, but the reflection's hands were resting on the countertop. I screamed, spinning around, but of course there was nothing there. Just my empty kitchen, the hum of the fridge, and my own ragged breathing. Things escalated when my sister Chloe came to visit. She was excited to see the house, and I was grateful for the company. Having someone else there made me feel safer. At least until she noticed something too. "You've got a weird mirror in the hallway," she said, wrinkling her nose. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I don't know. When I walked past it, it felt like someone was watching me. I don't like it." I wanted to tell her everything, but I didn't want to sound crazy. So I just laughed it off. It's probably just the old glass. Makes everything look weird. But Chloe wasn't convinced. Later that evening, she caught me staring at the bathroom mirror, my hands gripping the sink so hard my knuckles were white. What's going on, Meg?" she asked softly. I broke down and told her everything. The lingering reflections, the strange movements, the feeling that something was wrong. She didn't laugh or call me paranoid. Instead, she frowned and said, "You need to get rid of those mirrors." We decided to cover all the mirrors in the house that night. Old bed sheets, towels, whatever we could find. It gave me some peace of mind, until the knocking started. It was faint at first, like a gentle tap, tap, tap. Chloe and I exchanged nervous glances, trying to figure out where it was coming from. And then it grew louder, more insistent. It was coming from the covered mirror in the hallway. "Don't touch it," Chloe whispered, grabbing my arm. The knocking stopped, but then a voice came. It was muffled, distorted, but unmistakably mine. "Meg, let me out." My blood turned to ice. Chloe backed away, her face pale. "That's not you," she whispered. "Yeah, no kidding, it's not me." The voice kept calling, growing louder. "Meg, please. It's so dark in here. I'm trapped." I didn't move. Chloe didn't either. We just stood there frozen in place, until the voice stopped. Then the knocking started again, this time louder and from every mirror in the house. That night I dreamt of the mirrors shattering, of hands reaching out from the shards to drag me inside. I woke up drenched in sweat, only to find Chloe sitting at the edge of my bed, staring at the covered mirror across the room. "Chloe?" I called softly, but she didn't respond. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and she turned to me slowly, but her face wasn't right. It was her, but her eyes were empty, like twin voids. Her lips twisted into a grin that didn't belong to her. "Not Chloe," she whispered, her voice distorted. I scrambled backward, falling off the bed. When I looked up, she was gone, but the mirror was uncovered. My reflection stood there, grinning at me, even though I wasn't smiling. The next day I tried to get rid of the mirrors. I smashed the one in the hallway with a hammer, but when the glass shattered, something dark and shadowy spilled out. It writhed on the floor like smoke before vanishing into thin air. I called Chloe, begging her to come back and help me, but she didn't answer. When I checked my phone later, I saw a missed call from her number. The voicemail chilled me to the bone. "Meg?" Her voice said, calm and cold. "Why are you trying to break us? We just want to live too." Now I'm sitting here, writing this as fast as I can. The mirrors are uncovered again, and I don't know how. My reflection is watching me, her grin wider than ever. I can hear them knocking, but this time, it's not just from the mirrors. It's from the walls, too. It was supposed to be the perfect getaway. Sarah and I had been working non-stop for months, and a week in a charming little town called Ashwick seemed like the perfect escape. The town was postcard-worthy. Quaint cottages, cobblestone streets, and a picturesque lake surrounded by thick, misty woods. The first day was idyllic. We explored the town square, bought homemade trinkets from the local market, and had dinner at a cozy diner. The people were friendly, if not a little off. There was something about the way they smiled. Too wide, too practiced, but we chalked it up to small-town quirks. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we decided to take a stroll by the lake. It was peaceful, with fireflies dancing in the air and the sound of water lapping against the shore. And that's when we saw something. A strange, flickering light at the edge of the woods. It looked almost like a lantern swaying in the breeze. "Ooh, let's check it out," Sarah said, curiosity lighting up her face. I hesitated. "It's getting late, we should head back." But she was already walking toward it. I followed, unable to shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we got closer, the light suddenly blinked out, and the woods fell silent. Not just quiet, silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. We turned back toward the town, but something felt wrong. The air seemed heavier, and the shadows stretched longer than they should have. By the time we reached our inn, I was on edge. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and a sound of Sarah humming. She was sitting by the window, sipping from a mug. "Sleep well?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, though my dreams had been strange, full of whispers and flickering lights. We spent the day much like the one before, exploring the town and chatting with locals. But by the afternoon, I started getting a weird sense of déjà vu. The old man in the market dropped the same jar of honey at the same time. The waitress at the diner told us the same story about her cat getting stuck in a tree. Even the weather felt identical. "Doesn't this feel familiar to you?" I asked Sarah. She shrugged. "Small towns probably just have their routines. Relax. But as we walked by the lake that evening, the flickering light appeared again. This time, Sarah didn't suggest investigating it. We both stared at it, unease settling in my stomach like a stone. When I woke up the next morning, I knew something was wrong. The smell of coffee was there, and Sarah was by the window humming the same tune. Everything was exactly the same. Sarah, doesn't this feel off? Like we've done this before? She frowned. What are you talking about? I explained everything, the repeated conversations, the identical weather, the flickering light. She laughed it off at first, but as the day went on, she started noticing it too. The jar of honey breaking, the cat's story, even the exact sequence of footsteps on the cobblestones. That night we stayed away from the lake, but the light found us anyway. It appeared outside our window, swaying in the darkness. I tried to convince myself it was someone with a lantern, but deep down I knew better. By the fourth day, or the fourth repeat, I guess, you couldn't deny something was terribly wrong. People in the town started acting different. The old man at the market's eyes were milky white. The waitress's smile was stretched so wide it looked like her face would split. And the light? It wasn't just outside anymore. It was everywhere, flashing in shop windows, reflecting in puddles, even glowing faintly beneath the inn's floorboards. Sarah was unraveling, and so was I. We have to get out of here, she said, grabbing my arm. We packed our bags and jumped into the car, but no matter which road we took, we always ended up back in Ashwick. We're trapped, I whispered, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. On the fifth repeat, the townspeople weren't even pretending to be human anymore. Their movements were jerky and unnatural, like marionettes controlled by an unseen hand. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their smiles were razor sharp. We barricaded ourselves in our room, but it didn't help. At night we heard them outside, scratching at the walls and whispering in low guttural voices. They were calling our names. The flickering light wasn't just a lantern anymore. It had a shape now. A tall, shadowy figure with 2 long limbs and a head that tilted unnaturally. It stood in the center of town, watching us. We have to confront it, Sarah said, her voice trembling, but determined. You're insane, I snapped. Whatever that thing is, it's not human. Neither are they, she shot back, gesturing to the window where the townspeople gathered, their glowing eyes fixed on us. On what felt like the 100th repeat, we decided to face the light. We walked hand in hand to the center of town, where the shadowy figure waited. The townspeople stood in a circle around it, silent and still. The figure tilted its head, and a deep echoing voice filled the air. You don't belong here. Sarah asked it what it wanted, but it didn't answer. Instead, it raised a hand, and the entire town seemed to flicker like a glitching screen. The sky darkened, the cobblestones cracked, and the buildings crumbled into ash. We just want to leave, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You cannot leave, it replied. This place is no longer yours. You chose to see, and now you stay. Before we could respond, the world shifted again. The next thing I knew, we were back in our room, the morning sun streaming through the window. Sarah was humming by the window, and the smell of coffee filled the air. But this time, the townspeople didn't smile when we walked outside. They didn't even look human anymore. We've been here for weeks, or months. I don't even know anymore. Every day we try something new to break the loop. Every day the town grows darker, the people more monstrous, and the light more blinding. If you're reading this, Don't come to Ashwick. Don't look for us. And whatever you do, don't follow the light. It was supposed to be a quick pit stop. My boyfriend Jake and I were road tripping across the country, hitting up roadside diners and quirky little towns along the way. The sun was setting when we rolled into the town of Meadowbrook. It wasn't on the map, but we were tired and the vacancy sign outside the quaint little inn looked inviting enough. The streets were eerily quiet though. Too quiet. No cars, no music, not even the hum of streetlights. Still, we chalked it up to being a sleepy little town. The woman at the inn's front desk greeted us with a wide, almost unsettling smile. She looked too perfect, like she had stepped out of a Norman Rockwell painting. "Welcome to Meadowbrook," she said in a sing-song voice. "Just passing through?" Yeah, just for the night," Jake replied, setting our duffel bag on the counter. Her smile faltered for the briefest second. I almost missed it. But there was something behind her eyes, like she was sizing us up. "Room 3, she finally said, handing over a key. Her hand brushed up against mine, and it was cold as ice. We dropped our bags in the room, and Jake suggested grabbing something to eat. The room smelled faintly of mildew, but it was clean enough, and we didn't plan on staying long anyway. The only place open was a small diner a few blocks from the inn. As soon as we stepped inside, the chatter stopped. Everyone, an elderly couple in the corner, a man nursing coffee at the counter, and a waitress behind the register, turned to look at us. It wasn't a friendly kind of look. It was the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. "Evening," Jake said, trying to break the tension, but no one responded. The waitress finally gestured for us to sit in the booth, but her hands were shaking. The menu was basic: burgers, fries, sandwiches. Jake ordered a burger and I got a BLT. The waitress hesitated before writing it down, like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. As she walked away, I caught her glancing nervously at the clock on the wall. Jake leaned in. "Weird vibe, huh?" I nodded. "Yeah, let's eat and get out of here." The food came out quickly, but as soon as the waitress set it down, the lights flickered. The whole diner fell silent again, except for the hum of the old jukebox in the corner. Then, the elderly man muttered something under his breath. "Visitors." "What did you say?" Jake asked. The waitress shot the man a warning glare. He quickly looked down at his plate. We didn't finish our meal. Something felt off. The air in the diner seemed heavier, like it was pressing down on us. As we walked back to the inn, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Jake joked about it, saying I was just tired, but he wasn't fooling me. I could tell he felt it too. Back in our room, I double-checked the lock on the door and closed the curtains tight. I wanted to suggest leaving right then, but it was pitch black outside, and the thought of driving those winding roads in the dark didn't sit right with me. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the window. "Jake," I whispered, shaking him awake. "Do you hear that?" He groaned and rolled over. "It's probably a tree branch. Go back to sleep." Tap, tap, tap. I slowly pulled back the curtain. There was no tree. Just a pale face staring back at me. The face didn't belong to a person, though. Its eyes were black as coal, and its mouth was too wide, stretching unnaturally across its face. I screamed, and it was gone. The next morning, we packed up and decided to leave Meadowbrook as fast as we could. But when we tried to drive out of town, the road kept looping back. Every turn brought us back to the same square, the same inn, the same diner. Jake was losing it. What the hell is going on? We've been driving for an hour. We pulled over near the diner, and the waitress from last night came rushing out. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You have to leave before sundown, she whispered, her voice frantic. They'll come for you. I asked who, but she just shook her head and ran back inside. Jake tried asking a man walking by for directions, but the man just stared at him with that same eerie smile the innkeeper had. You're here now, the man said. You belong. Desperate, we decided to confront the innkeeper. She didn't seem surprised when we stormed in. You can't leave, she said simply. Why not? Jake demanded. She sighed almost like she pitied us. The town made a deal long ago. We stay safe, but in return, outsiders don't leave. A deal with who? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Her eyes flickered to the window. Not who. What? The lights flickered again, and a low, guttural growl rumbled through the room. They're here, she whispered. Jake grabbed my hand and we bolted. We didn't care about our bags or the car, we just ran. But the streets twisted and turned, leading us back to the same square every time. By nightfall, the townspeople had gathered. They stood in a perfect circle around us, their faces blank, their eyes empty. The air grew colder, and that growling sound returned, louder this time. Jake tried to fight them off, but their strength was inhuman. Hands grabbed at us, pulling us toward the center of the square. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Its eyes, those same black pits, locked onto mine. You will stay, it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. The last thing I remember is screaming. Weeks later, a new couple checked into the inn. The innkeeper greeted them with the same wide smile. Just passing through?